Dub.
Whenever we can, wherever we can, we're talking hoops. And you know our guys will ramble.
Can you just email me the rest of this story?
This is Just Dubs with John Dickinson.
Dickinson's an underrated talent, 100%.
On KNBR 104.5 and 6.8. Streaming live at knbr.com and on the KNBR app.
All right, welcome in. Happy Saturday, everybody. It is John Dickinson and Just Dubs here on The Sports Leader. 808 KNBR, the number, 415-808-5627. If you want to jump in and join the conversation, we love to keep it interactive here on this Saturday morning, and a busy day of Dubs coverage here on The Leader, as we've got Just Dubs for you here for the next hour. And then, of course, we'll be out at Harmonic Brewing in Thrive City after the Warriors take on the Phoenix Suns, the rematch after another frustrating defeat for the Warriors at the hands of the Suns going back to Thursday night in Phoenix. 3 games in 11 days, and the Warriors can't get the job done in any of those games despite the rest and despite Stephen Curry coming back into the fold. As always, we've got our guy Raf Corral manning the ship here in the Daly City studios. We got Kyle Haar, fine producer of this program and of Dubs OT, along for the ride as well this morning. Kyle, how are you, man? Happy holidays. It's a festive vibe right now in the Bay Area, and people are excited about the 49ers and everything ahead for them. Not so much about the Warriors right now. People, I think, are reaching a frustrating boiling point with the Dubs, given the way things have gone here.
Yeah, losing 3 straight was brutal. Was brutal for the season, and falling 2 games under 500. But me, I'm doing well. We're creeping up to Christmas. I hope, JD, you finished all your Christmas shopping. I need to get some last minute gifts, but we're hanging in there.
Yeah, I'm a last minute guy. I'm a December 23rd, even 24th kind of a guy as it relates to that, and still have the 49er Indy trip ahead and back, and some hosting duties next week as well. So that's going to be something to kind of plug in here, but an off day tomorrow, and we'll watch a lot of football, of course, as we always do. But yeah, disappointing as it relates to the Warriors now at a new low point for the season. 2 games under 500 for the first time. And we were talking about this on Dubs OT on Thursday night. It's just the repetitive nature of the early part of these seasons for the Warriors. And we went back through, and I think it was 13-15. I think they were 14-14 a couple of times in the last 3 years. And I think they were actually 15-13 a year ago at this point, basically at the 1/3 mark of the season. But it not only is the basketball not up to par, and we'll get into what Draymond Green had to say about why Steve Kerr has had so many difficulties staying with a consistent rotation early in the season. We'll get into the Steve Kerr problem, if there is a Steve Kerr problem, although I think this team is really where it's at, mainly because of an over-evaluation of the roster that they thought they had coming off of last season, and a belief that they didn't need to maybe do as much as they actually did to get to a point where they could just be stable in the lead up to January 15 and the opportunity to be able to move Jonathan Kuminga and make some other trades to push the roster back toward potentially being a championship contender. Unfortunately, Kyle, they find themselves right now, and we're going to get into it, in this position of they need to make some moves just to get back to solidifying themselves as a playoff team, whether that's via the play-in tournament or getting somehow into the top 6 by getting extremely hot. But they're a level below, I think, where they thought they could be, and they have not been able to coast. The defense has been, for the most part, pretty good, but nights where the offense, nights where they get the great defense, often they don't get the offense. And then on the rare nights where they've had a bunch of offense, then those have been the nights where they haven't played as good a defense, and they've lost some high scoring games. Down the stretch in games continues to be a problem for the Warriors. 5-10 in 15 clutch games. That's something that's got to get rectified, and that's something that wasn't an issue in the post Jimmy Butler trade era. But I don't know, man. I've got some thoughts on this, and the question I want to throw out at 808 KNBR 415-808-5627, Golden State Lumber and Showroom text line open as well. We appreciate everybody watching on YouTube and Twitch as always. The best YouTube chat in sports, the Dubs OT, Just Dubs community. But I mean, what's the biggest issue right now? What is the and there are many issues, but what would you say? And I'll let you go first quickly here, Kyle, and we can kind of kick it around. But what is the biggest issue? Because I think part of the problem is this Warriors team suddenly has so many different issues that it starts to become a little, you get a little panicky thinking about like which one should they address first. And we all know they're going to make some moves here coming up in a month, but they can't do that yet. What's the one most pressing problem for this Warriors team right now as you see it?
I think for me the biggest issue is that each loss, it feels like it's not the same issue. It's either the offense or the defense or the three-point shooting or the turnovers. And frankly, for me, it's a little vague, but I think the biggest issue is that they just have not looked in sync for 95% of the games so far this season.
Well, and it struck me, and you're right. I mean, it's something different every night, which again I think is the most frustrating aspect of it. You get great defense, you can't hit shots. You hit shots on certain nights, and then the defense isn't there. You get beat almost single-handedly a couple of times in the last 2 weeks because you turn the ball over 20 plus times, and or you can't get an offensive rebound in a key situation. More athletic teams on the wing. It's a lot of the things that we've seen be problems for the Warriors throughout really the last 4 years since they won that 2022 title. But it is something different every night. I also think there's stuff going on internally. And I think, you can say, well, JD, this is a team that, 13 and 15 and, any team that's not winning at the level that you want to be, winning at is going to have, or the appearance of, internal issues, but they haven't really, I think since the middle of November haven't looked like, when's the last time they really looked when they've had everybody? Because I think this is the other part of the problem. Like they enjoy playing together. And I think you almost have to go back to, I think it was there the first couple of games of the season. I think it was there, obviously, when they lost the game in Oklahoma City, got blown out, embarrassed, and then they went to San Antonio, those 2 games, and Steph goes off, and there's some of the old vibe coming back, and then they win against the Pelicans to make it 3 in a row. But I feel like as the losing has continued, and what they got to, I think 7-6 at that point, and so you look up now after they were 7-6 and they're 13 and 15, so that's what, 6-9 basically in that. But 2 of those wins were the games in which Stephen Curry didn't play. And I think when a lot of the main guys were gone and a lot of the 7 to 17 on the roster were playing, those teams played for the most part like they enjoyed playing together and had some joy. So I think as this thing has progressively become worse in terms of less frequent winning, it's looked more like a team that's got some internal stuff going on. And you can say, well, JD, they do have some internal stuff going on. I mean, Joe Lacob with the leaked email response this past week to a frustrated fan after the Portland game. You've got Steve Kerr openly saying he's not doing a good job. You've got basically Joe Lacob intimating that he doesn't believe Steve Kerr's doing a good job in the email response. You've got Steve having to acknowledge that. you've got Steve saying he's going to search for more consistency in terms of his starting lineup and his rotation. And then he winds up playing 12 players in Phoenix by the start of the second quarter with Jonathan Kuminga getting in there. He plays 11 in the first. Kuminga earned his right to be back in the Warriors rotation, but then he plays 9 minutes, which kind of makes you wonder, like, why did he play at all if he was only going to play 9 minutes? And it just seems like there are a lot of, I'll go back to what the conversation was with Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green, a lot of agendas. Feels like there's a lot of agendas. And here we are 5 weeks later in the aftermath of that OKC, but it just seems like Lacob's got his agenda and his view as to what he thinks this Warriors team should be and how it should operate. Steve Kerr's got his view. You've got to play a certain way with Steph. You play a completely different way when you don't have Steph. You got to play a different way when you don't have Steph, but you have Jimmy, which is something that Jimmy Butler vocalized. And then you got to play a completely different way when you don't have anybody on the floor. And we've seen the Warriors struggle with that and then figure out how to do it. So it just seems like there's a lot of different agendas. Try to get Kuminga back in after he was out. I think some of the starting lineup oddness has been predicated on different agendas in terms of who should be playing and who should be starting. And we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. I felt, why hadn't they played the lineup of Steph, Podziemski, Moody, Jimmy Butler, and Draymond Green a lot? But it goes to, and look, some of these agendas are not drama and necessarily internal strife, although I think some of it is drama and internal strife. But it's as simple as you don't want to play Draymond at the 5. Well, your best lineup post Jimmy Butler trade is Draymond at the 5. So, but because you don't want to tire him out, you don't do that. And then you have Quentin Post playing and you have Draymond playing at the 4. And then you need to pick a 2 guard, and you don't want to pick Brandon Podziemski because Podziemski struggled. So you give the opportunity to Moses Moody, and now Moses Moody struggled. It's just a different problem every night. And, and I felt, because Podziemski was struggling in the moment in which Jonathan Kuminga was also struggling, that they didn't want to put Podziemski in the starting lineup in a moment where they were saying, Jonathan Kuminga, you're not good enough to be in the starting lineup based on your play, because internally it would have created, well, what about this guy? And we hear this all the time from fans. How come Podziemski isn't held to the same well, because Podziemski's a better player. Even on his worst days, he's still a better player than Jonathan Kuminga is on his worst days. I don't want to make it about Kuminga because I don't think anything really that's happened this season is Kuminga's fault, although he has been awful since he's come back from the injury a couple of weeks ago when he's had the opportunity to play. But I don't want to make it about him because, again, everybody knew the deal with the contract and trying to give him an opportunity to play and being essentially the human trade exception and all of that kind of stuff. But the reality is there are different agendas at play that have led to, I think, weird rotations. I think it's led to opportunities that maybe haven't been earned. And I think in turn, it's led to other players like a Will Richard, for example. Not that Will can't handle it like a pro, but now all of a sudden Will Richard has to be the guy that takes a DNP because you have to carve out minutes for Jonathan Kuminga because Jonathan Kuminga had a great couple of practices after Jonathan Kuminga was bad and got himself pulled out of the rotation. But it feels like the Kuminga issue, again, it's not necessarily about him. It's just indicative of all of the issues that this Warriors roster has right now in terms of performance and and trying to kind of maximize what you think you could get or what you thought you could get out of this team coming into the season that you haven't been able to get to this point, Kyle. I know that's a lot to chew on, but it's all adding to this frustration that is bubbling beneath the surface. And I think coming to the top to where, you look at a game like tonight and you look at the remaining games here in December and you say, all right, home game against Phoenix, you just played them in Phoenix. Like, you got to win tonight. Like, tonight's kind of a must win. And you got to figure out a way to beat Dallas on Christmas. And you got the Orlando game in between. Then you got to go win in Charlotte, at the end of the year. You got to win in Brooklyn at the end of the year. Like, this team needs to get on a little bit of a roll to calm things down. And I just feel like they keep kicking the can down the road in terms of when they're going to get it together. It was after the schedule gets easier in terms of rest, they're going to get it together. And then they don't get it together. They have Steph back. They have played 3 games in 11 days. They don't get it together. They lose every game in that return. So it's just a number of different problems. I think there's internal things going on. I think there's basketball issues going on. There's age. There's poor basketball fit issues with this team right now. There's an inability to close. I mean, even Thursday, Jimmy Butler, need to get Jimmy to be more aggressive, need to get the ball to Jimmy in spots where he can look to really score and be effective. And you know what? The Warriors go do it. And Jimmy Butler plays a great game, one of his best games of the season in terms of scoring. He's looking to shoot. He's getting to the free throw line. He goes for 31. And then it's a night where Steph Curry has one of his worst shooting games of the season, and you don't get the Steph Jimmy bump, even on a night where you get a good game from Podziemski, and then nobody else plays well. And then that's another problem, Kyle, for this Warriors team, is every single time Steve Kerr anoints somebody, and you can say Kuminga, going back to the beginning of the year when he said he was going to be a starter, and then Kuminga immediately plays his way out of it. Podziemski's going to get a ton of run. Podziemski plays terrible at the beginning of the year, although he's been coming around a little bit more lately. Pat Spencer, got to have him, going to play. Saved the season with a couple of wins in Cleveland and Chicago. And then we get a couple of days removed from that, and Pat Spencer's playing 7 minutes in the game in Portland after Steph Curry comes back. But Quentin Post, going to be in the starting lineup. And now Quentin Post doesn't have one of his better games. DeAnthony Melton, going to be a closing player. Has DeAnthony Melton made a basket in the last 3 games? Like, it doesn't feel like it. And if he has, it's been – and look, I love DeAnthony Melton. DeAnthony Melton's I think in a perfect world, DeAnthony Melton would be the starting 2 guard for the Warriors next to Steph, and he'd be playing 30 minutes a night. But he's been an injury-plagued player, unfortunately, in his career, and he's coming off an ACL. And so you're not going to play DeAnthony Melton 30-plus minutes a night as a starting 2 guard, even though DeAnthony Melton still is only 27 years old. And in that window of exactly where the Warriors don't have enough productive players, guys in their mid to late 20s that are vets and have done some stuff in the league and have the ability to perform as quality role players. But you go up and down the roster, and it's everybody, Moody, going to be a part of this starting group, and then Moody goes out and stink. Like, it really makes it difficult night to night. And I'm, in Steve Kerr's defense a little bit to figure out the right guys to play. Cause every time it just, for somebody that's had the magic touch a lot, it feels like the magic touch in terms of I'm going in on this guy. It feels like every time Steve's gone in on somebody in a positive way, this guy's going to be a part of it. That player immediately starts to play worse. Frustrating stuff, Kyle.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm the Warriors' opponent, I think the game plan is pretty simple in terms of double team Steph as much as possible and make the other guys make shots. And frankly, they don't have guys that can consistently make shots, and until they get guys that can consistently make shots, I mean, that game plan's still gonna hold true. And yeah, like, you have Jimmy Butler, but Jimmy's not gonna space the floor.
Jimmy needs to
can get his 30, but getting 10 to 12 free throws a night and then shooting like 10 for 14, like we saw against the Suns. But I mean, until the Warriors get guys that can beat teams from the outside, and if they blitz Steph, I mean, I think we're still going to see this Warriors offense continue to struggle.
All right, 808 KMBR. We're going to take a quick timeout. 415-808-5627. Here's where I want to go with it, and we're going to get to what Draymond Green had to say about Steve Kerr's inability to remain consistent with the lineups and the rotations, which I think has been a frustrating part of the problem here as the losing has gone on over the last few weeks. And this team's just not anywhere close to where they believed they could be. And you saw Shams yesterday. I don't know if you did, Kyle, but Shams on the ESPN NBA show, he spoke to the frustration going on internally for the Warriors, who, as he put it, and look, you don't have to be Shams to know this, they believed they had a 50-win team with the group that they currently have. And let's be honest, they aren't sniffing 50 wins with the group that they currently have. In fact, they're going to have to make a couple of big moves to be able to get to that point. But we'll get into Draymond on consistency coming up. And the question I want to ask the YouTube chat, the question I want to ask here at 808 KMBR 415-808-5627, Golden State Lumber and Showroom text line. One thing, give me one thing, and we'll go around the room here, and we'll get Kyle, we'll get Raph. I'll step in here. We'll get into the YouTube chat and Kyle's clicks. One thing that reasonably can be fixed before January 15th. Because they're going to have a 3-week window to make trades, and they're going to have to make trades. But as I've said so often here, they're still basically 4 months away until they can make trades. They're 13 and 15. They got to play a bunch of games between now and then. A lot of those games are going to be at home the beginning of January. They've got one more road trip here after Christmas, as they'll be home here for the next 3 games with Phoenix, Orlando, and Dallas on Christmas afternoon. But what's the one thing that reasonably can be fixed to get this team on track in the short term, so any of the moves that they make between January 15th and February 5th can matter in the long term? We'll get into that coming up. 808 KMBR. It's Just Dubs with JD here on the Sports Leader.
KMBR, the Sports Leader.
I'm just going to throw the pass when I know it's there. Instead of second guessing I'm a great passer. So I'm just going to, if I see the pass there, I'm not second guessing. I'm just going to throw it. If I turn it over, I turn it over. But I'm a great passer. So I won't second guess my passes. I'm just going to throw it when I know it's there.
Live from downtown.
Hurry, way downtown. Bang! Bang!
This is Just Dubs with John Dickinson on the Sports Leader. Streaming live at knbr.com and on the KNBR app.
Well, that's not what you want to hear from Draymond Green. If I turn it over, I'm going to turn it over. Draymond Green off of the 5-turnover game in Phoenix. 8-turnover game, was it, in Portland? I mean, that is far too many turnovers, and the Warriors end up throwing it away or giving it away 20 times. It leads to 30 points. It's the biggest single reason they lost the game in Portland. It was a big part of the reason why they lost the game in Phoenix as well. Actually, I get that reversed. It was the reason they lost in Phoenix. It was a big part of the reason they lost in Portland. And the Warriors find themselves, 3 winnable games, right? Minnesota without Ant, and they can't win that game at home down the stretch on a night where you get Steph Curry back, and Steph Curry looks great. Steph Curry goes absolutely bonkers, top 5 ever in Portland. You can't win that game down the stretch because of poor defense and allowing for a bunch of offensive rebounds, and then turnovers bite the Warriors in the ass in the game on Thursday in Phoenix. So they're back at it tonight. We're back here. It's Just Dubs with JD on the Sports Leader. We'll keep this thing going until about noon, and then we're back with you later on this evening as we will be live from Harmonic Brewing in Thrive City after the Warriors take on the Suns. All right, a couple of things to get to. Question on the board at 808-KNBR, 415-808-5627, Golden State Lumber and Showroom text line. Also in our YouTube chat, and we'll get to Kyle's clicks momentarily. What's the one thing that reasonably can be fixed for this Warriors team between now and January 15th? January 15th, obviously, the date in which Jonathan Kuminga can be traded. I do think the Warriors are going to look to trade Jonathan Kuminga. I think they were always going to look to trade Jonathan Kuminga, but as has been well documented in this space and on these airwaves, I don't know what the whatever the value you thought for Kuminga was is not what if you thought it was terrible, a month ago or 2 months ago or 6 months ago, it's worse than you think it is. So take whatever level and the value at this point. So now the Warriors in a position where they're going to have to include other assets to be able to get a quality, capable player back in some kind of a trade for Kuminga. We're going to go around the room. Let's do this first, and then we'll get to the Draymond comments on consistency. Let's start. I'll start. And we saw this in the chat. The one thing that I think reasonably can be fixed before January 15th is collectively, I think Steve, Steph, Jimmy, and Draymond have to meet, and maybe they already have, but I think as the 3 OGs plus the head coach, I think they have to meet, if they haven't already, and basically make a commitment that for the next 4 weeks, they have to go balls to the wall to try to win as many games as possible to basically save the season. And there may be an opportunity to coast in March a little bit before you have to get ready for a final run. But I think that the hope is, and look, maybe this team's just not good enough. Maybe they can't stay healthy enough. But I think a big part of the inconsistencies from the veterans has been the desire to coast through the regular season. And they just have not been able to win enough games doing that. They need Steph and Jimmy to play well, to beat Phoenix on the road on a Thursday in the middle of December. I mean, that's just the reality. But I think there needs to be a commitment from those 3 that they're going to burn it out here for the next month. And I'll even take it a step further. I think it's the remainder of the year starting tonight. And I mean, what is it? 6 games? They get the 3 home games and then the 3 road games. Like, they got to bust it to go 5-1 in the next 6. Like, you could lose at Toronto a week from tomorrow in the afternoon when everybody's gearing up for the 49ers and the Bears and watching football. Like nobody's going to even notice if the Warriors lose that game because everybody's going to be so locked in on what's going on NFL-wise and 49er-wise. So win the other 5 games that people are going to be paying attention to between now and then beginning tonight. And then you get the, 11 out of 12 or 10 out of 11, I've lost count, to begin the year at home. You got to make some hay in that stretch. If it's a 12-game stretch, you got to get a 9. You got to go 9-3 in that stretch. You got to go 10-2 in that. Like this, but it starts with Steve's going to be more consistent and put the egos aside and just play the right 9 or 10. Steph and Jimmy have got to be committed to being super aggressive. And look, this isn't a Steph problem because Steph's been great. Not Thursday, but he's been great overall. And Draymond's got to play a little more buttoned up. But Jimmy and Draymond specifically have to bring the aggressiveness and the focus and the desire to compete on a night in, night out basis like they did in February, March, and April after the Jimmy Butler trade. That's the one thing that I think reasonably can be fixed. Now, there's a risk because you may do it and burn out for the next month, and then it leaves you with less in the tank for the final 2.5 to 3 months of the season. I'm less concerned about that because the reinforcements are coming. You're going to make some trades, and there's going to be 2 or 3 different players on the roster that are going to give you that bump, that are going to give you that energy that the Warriors got when they made the trade last year for Jimmy. And you're not going to get anybody as good as Jimmy, certainly, but fixing the 4 through 8 spots on the Warriors rotation between January 15th and February 5th, that's what will carry you for the stretch run over the final couple of months of the year. They need the OGs to carry them and let everybody else not be focused on as much over the next month. So that's the one thing. And maybe that's not even reasonable, Kyle. Maybe that's irrational to think they can do it. We know Steph can do it. And look, you got to stay healthy while you're doing it. We don't know that Steve can come up with a consistent rotation in January and December because he's never really done it in December and January. He's done it down the street. He does it for 3 or 4 games. And then Jimmy, the Jimmy we saw in Phoenix is the Jimmy we need to see for these next, whatever it is, 17 games basically over the next 5+ weeks or so from December 20 all the way until, and I'm looking at, I think it's January 20th actually is the end of that long home stretch that the Warriors have. So yeah, basically the next month, the vets and the OGs have to say, hey, we're carrying this thing. Fair or foul, Kyle? And then we'll get to some chats. Raph, we'll get what you think. But what's the one thing for you? And am I out of bounds thinking that the OGs can actually cover it for the next month?
No, definitely fair. But the thing that I was going to go for, and I think they kind of go hand in hand, is rest and rotation. I don't need to see Steph, Jimmy, and Dre take any more rest during this 10, 15, 20 game stretch. I mean, I was just taking a quick peek at the schedule, and really there's only like 2 more back-to-back, or no, sorry, 3 more back-to-backs until like late February. So, I mean, that's fine, but I don't want to see Steph, Jimmy, Dre rest and then kind of screw up the rotation. And then Kerr is like, oh, well, this guy kind of played well while Steph, Jimmy, and Dre were out. Well, that might not be the same when Steph, Jimmy, and Dre come back in. So I think it goes hand in hand. I think Steve Kerr already said, look, our starting 5 moving forward is going to be Steph, Moody, Jimmy, Dre, and Quinn Post. And I know, like,
which by the way, Kyle, that's not their best starting lineup. I know everybody wants them to play the bigger lineups more. There's not enough shooting, and honestly, there's some liability issues there in other ways if Quentin Post isn't hitting shots. Anyway, I apologize for interrupting you, Kyle, as you're mid thought. But the bigger lineups, and here's the elephant in the room: the bigger lineups have not worked at the level that people think they work, and so you find yourself in this spot where you kind of need to play small, but you don't want to play small. So I don't love if this is the 5. Like, I give Steve credit for trying to have some consistency, but I think, to be honest, like, it would be better if he just went to the small lineup and put Pods in there for post, or it would be better if they put Pods in at this point for Moody and get a little bit more ball movement and connectivity among that group. But he's playing the size card at this point. Anyway, go ahead, Kyle. Continue.
Oh no, I agree, and I've been calling for that starting lineup to be the starting lineup for this whole season. I mean, I know Pods was not playing well early to start, but what I was going to say to finish my thought was, I mean, we've heard Kerr say, yeah, this is going to be X for the foreseeable future regarding, like, with Kuminga, and then he changes his mind, after that. But just to wrap up that thought there.
So consistency with the lineup, consistency with the rotation would be your thing. Raph, what do you got, man? Raph's all fired up for the Bears game tonight, and we're going to have that here on the leader as well. That's going to be our lead in to Dubs OT tonight, with those games ending basically right around the same time. So yeah, Raph is fired up for a huge NFL Saturday.
Let's do this
in Chicago. What is the one thing? What's the one thing that you think they can reasonably fix in the next 4 weeks?
And for me, it's got to be fixing the defense. I mean, especially on those nights where their shooting's maybe not in rhythm. Maybe, like I said, the offense is not, like, really hitting it that night. If you get that defense going, especially when you add that trade piece for JK, I think that's key. Getting that defense back where it was, especially the second half of last season, where they won the games.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, Raph, because they would tell you that they're really happy with the defense, and it's been, top 10 to top 5 to top 3, depending upon the stretches that you look at. But it doesn't feel like it's been that way. It feels like it feels like they're cooking the books a little bit on the numbers. And it feels like there's been too many nights where, especially when they've had the offense, and sometimes you see this, Raph, with bad teams, and it's the fact that, the defense, to generate more offense, you kind of have to be worse defensively, right? Like, you either have to put more offensive lineups on the court, or you have to, when you're playing well on offense, you're playing at a pace which allows for maybe more possessions and that kind of thing. So it's almost a ambiguous complementary football type component to the defense. Has to be on point, I think, in conjunction with whatever offense they have on that night. Like, the Phoenix game is almost the counter to your point, right? Like, they play great defense, but then it's on a night where they can't score 100 themselves. And then we've seen them score 130, and then they give up 136. I mean, it's just in 2 games. You go back to the Portland game and the Phoenix game, but yeah, I think, and then, the defense has varied also, Raph, when, depending upon who's been on the floor. Draymond's on the floor, it's great. Draymond's not on the floor, it isn't as good. That, I think the defense is, Quentin Post has been good defensively, but then if he's not hitting shots, should he even be out there? I mean, which obviously is going to hurt your defense in some ways if you believe in the metrics, Raph. So the metrics don't meet the eye test. I'm actually with you on that, Raph.
Yeah, and can we drive to the hole a little more, get fouled? It's just, especially those nights where the ball's not going in. I mean, let's get fouled. Let's get some free throws and stay in the game.
Well, and they don't have creators in that vein, and that's the thing that they're gonna. It's twofold, and Tim Kawakami of the SF Standard, I think, put it out there. The lack of playmakers, it was evident in the game against Phoenix, and I quote tweeted it. I said, and shooting, like, they don't have enough shooting, and to me, it's the shooting more than the playmakers, but the playmakers will lead to more of those drives and fouls. I think the playmakers, in theory, can cut down the turnovers. I think that was Tim's point. But to me, if you have guys that when the ball's getting kicked to them, you can hit shots. That's the way that I think it has to go. So good thoughts there. All right, let's take another timeout. And we'll come back, and of course, like we always do when we can, we'll push this thing beyond noon just a little bit here to get a bunch of Kyle's clicks in, bunch of comments coming up as it relates to what's the one thing you can fix between now and the ability for the Warriors to make some trades. And then we'll get the Draymond comments on consistency coming back first here as Just Dubs rolls on with JD on the Sports Leader.
KNBR, the Sports Leader. Dub Nation, this is the real and inside story on Warriors basketball. Just Dubs with John Dickinson now continues, streaming live at twitch.tv/thesportsleader.
All right, welcome back. Final segment, 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. Just Dubs with JD. Back tonight at Harmonic Brewing in Thrive City, Warriors and the Suns, and we're going to be all over it from Harmonic, dissecting the game, and we'll see if the Warriors can get a win. They definitely need not only one, but they need 4 or 5 wins here in the final 12 days of 2025, and then they got to get on a roll the first half of 2026 in terms of January with all the home games that are coming up. All right, question du jour. We got 3 things we're going to get to here, and we will blow past the top of the hour a little bit in order to do it. We're going to get to Kyle's clicks. We're also going to get the Draymond quote on consistency. And then one more thing I wanted to throw into the chat. Anthony Slater of ESPN wrote a piece a couple of days ago, along with, I think it was Tim McMahon of ESPN, who covers the Mavs and some of the teams in the Southwest division. They wrote a piece about Klay Thompson's return again, and I know Klay's had a couple of returns already. I think, but Dallas played 3 times at Chase last year, if memory serves. But Klay coming back again for the Christmas holiday with the Warriors going at it against the Mavs, and a lot of it was just a rehash of the way things ended and how badly things ended between the Warriors and Klay. And look, Klay is he's a statue guy. He's a jersey retired guy. He's a all love, at some point when some of the bad feelings subside, which I think they easily will, when his career ultimately ends. And there was a tone to because of one of the quotes, could Klay come back at some point in his career? And Steph Curry was asked about it and all of that, and the sentiment that he may be able to come back at some point. I think that's nice in theory. If Klay comes back a couple of years from now to sign a 1-year deal or get kind of a final tour with the Dubs or a 1-day contract to retire as a Warrior, all of that. And again, Klay eats for free and all of that in the Bay. Legend. Again, bygones be bygones. But the one thing I don't want Klay Thompson back this year or next year, honestly. But we'll go 1 year at a time with it. To me, it's still too raw. It's still too soon. He isn't productive enough of a player at this stage of his career to be back with this Warriors team. So I hope that that's not a thing that becomes a thing here in the next month and a half, because it does sound as if Klay is going to be going somewhere. The Mavs are going to be making a bunch of changes, but we'll throw that in the chat and on the Golden State Lumber and Showroom text line. Would you want Klay Thompson back? I'm fine with it as a ceremonial thing, even if it's a ceremonial season, let's say in 2 or 3 years when everything's completely done, or a ceremonial 1-day contract. But they can't bring Klay back and then just think that they have to play Klay and he's, now he's got to be a part. I mean, that part of the reason he's gone is because he thought he should regularly be, a part of the Warriors closing rotation and get carte blanche in terms of shot selection. And this team's not good enough to be writing those checks to Klay at this point. I understand why the frustration was there and the money and the Warriors, disrespected him in Klay's mind in terms of the way things went and not offering him more money to stay. Again, it's all love for Klay in the future, but it's still too soon, too raw, too bitter, too angry. And this team's got too many other internal locker room issues right now to be bringing that back into the mix for me. Atco Pest Control, as we get into the chats, a vet min, 2 or 3 years, sure, but otherwise, no. Klay Thompson is going to be a vet minimum player after his next contract. That is without a doubt. And he still has the ability to get hot on a night on a night here and there, and he's done that with Dallas and helped them win a couple of games. But yeah, Klay is not part of the answer. And again, unless he's willing to play Buddy Hield minutes and be a bench player that's playing 15 to 20, and if he's hot, maybe he plays more. That kind of a thing. Quickly, Kyle, I want to get to the other question, and the other big question of the day here is, what is the one thing reasonably that can be fixed before January 15th? We kind of went around the room. I want to get answers in the YouTube chat about that. But quickly, I'll Kyle, you want Clay back?
Yeah, right now, no. But yeah, when they're kind of out of contention and as a farewell season, sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine. But you're not winning no championship with Clay getting meaningful rotation minutes. I'll tell you that.
And let's also not look at the fact that this team has so many flaws as it currently stands and use that to revise history to the point where you say, oh, well, Clay would definitely be helping this team and they'd definitely be better with Clay. I mean, it was not the case last year at all. Like, they were better off last year without Clay. Now, maybe because it's been so bad this year that you look at it a little bit differently, but don't use the fact that things are bleak now to kind of romanticize a belief that you'd be getting the Clay Thompson from even 2021-22 when he came back off the second injury. All right, let's get to a bunch of chats here. Just Dubs, 808 KMBR, the phone number, but let's get to some Kyle's clicks with both of those questions. Gene McIntyre, win or lose tonight, won't change anything. Roster is bad. I hear that, but they got to get some wins. Otherwise, we're going to be having the conversation about whether or not it's even worth it to make moves. And that's complete BS. That's complete bunk. Like, I'm just going to get in front of that one. Like, you go all in on this team no matter what. And if the wheels come off, the wheels come off. That's where I am on that. But I don't necessarily disagree on that premise there, Gene. But you gotta win. So there is a continued belief from everybody within the organization that it's worth trying. Like, who wants this team to just tank it out and tear it down to the studs? You're not doing that anyway with Steph Curry. So it's just that is just something that's just a non-starter for me. But appreciate it, Gene, as always. Vibrations 1000. Can we trade Green? I think the Warriors are going to have to take a harder look at that. And I know that it's been reported that, they'd only do it in a package for Giannis and they'd prefer Jimmy with Giannis and Steph. They'd only do, I think that, the Anthony Davis thing is a little more intriguing to me. If you'd be willing to send Draymond somewhere and you end up getting Anthony Davis, but Anthony Davis is also out of shape right now and extremely injury prone. Draymond just needs a few more games. He needs his bad games to not be so bad. Like, I think that's the number one thing. Like, Draymond still has it in a way that can help this team in a big way, but his bad games are really bad. His bad games make it look like, is this guy on the path toward being cooked? And I don't think he is on the pathway toward being cooked, because you see the high-end games against players like Wemby. You see the on-off numbers in terms of when he's playing for this Warriors team defensively. So I just think it's a matter of Draymond taking a deep breath and playing a little bit more consistently with respect to the turnovers. I still think he's a winning player. Atco Pest Control, in my opinion, JD, I'd rather them lose. If they're too good by the deadline, Lacob says no to making trades. And why break this up? No, that part is not happening. Like, they could go 5-1 and 10-2 between now and then. And they still need to, whatever that is, 15-3. I don't have the exact number of games. They could go 15-3 in the next 18. And no, I don't think they'll do that, but they could do that. And you're still trading Kuminga, and you're still maybe trading somebody else. Like, I don't think that matters. And so we'll see. But yeah, he doesn't want to give up the post Steph picks, which I think is a problem. And he's used Giannis as the reason why for a lot of years. I don't disagree with any of that, Atco. But to me, this team's got to make moves regardless. It's kind of the opposite of the Gene comment, right? Hey, you can win tonight. It doesn't matter. I agree. You can win a bunch of games in the next month, and I don't think it matters as it relates to the trade deadline. You still have to move Kuminga for something, and you still have to be willing to maybe move some of your other young pieces to bring back. Again, it's that 4 through 7 spot on the roster, not positionally, but just in terms of pecking order. You know who their 3 best players are. And I think you kind of like their 7, 8 to 15, 16. The problem is you don't like their 4th best player, 5th best player, 6th best player on a night in, night out basis. Hey, Beer Man, 2 moves away from having to make 1 move that will help this team. Yeah, they're 3 years away from being 3 years away. No, I think it's 2 players away that aren't currently on the roster. How do you get them? Can you get them? Again, I feel like we've spent a lot of time talking about names, and we'll continue to do so in on this show more moving forward. But I did think this was the time, because of how poorly this team has played, to recognize the fact that it has to get better in the meantime. Otherwise, they're headed to a real grave situation. Let's get a few more here as we'll keep it going, maybe another 5 minutes or so. Ebe here, starting lineup, missing wide open 3-pointers is the biggest issue. Well, how do you fix that? Knock down the shots, hit a hot streak. But again, don't be fooled if some of these guys hit a hot streak, because it will inevitably only be followed by an extremely cold streak. Appreciate that, Ebe here. Also want to let everybody know you're listening to 104.5 FM and 680 AM San Francisco, the sports leader, a Cumulus media station. Final couple of minutes here. A little Just Dubs overtime on this Saturday morning. Thanks, Ebe. Appreciate that. Ahi Tuna. It's multifaceted, JD. Kerr is incapable of adjusting his offensive scheme and philosophy. 2, quality of player has gone down since Clay and JP left. 3, Kerr's decisions to not develop our draft picks. Look, I mean, you know it. I've said it. I don't think the draft picks are good at the level that people think they're good. Like, I think Moses Moody, we've seen how good Moses Moody can be. And we've seen, it's role player. We've seen how good Pajemski can be. It's role player. We've never really seen how good Kuminga can be as a role player, because he never really has been great as a role player. We've seen him flash when he can be on a team that never wins games if he's getting the ball a ton. But he has gotten worse and worse and worse, I feel like, over his time with the Warriors at being that turbocharged role player. So I don't think it's Kerr's decisions to develop. I just think they're not good enough. But yeah, the quality of play has gone down since Clay and Poole left, no question. The offensive scheme, I do think, and we saw this Thursday, and it was discussed during the week, we did see the Warriors change the offense a little bit with Steph not on the floor and Jimmy on the floor, which is something that Jimmy wanted. I do think they have to kind of make Jimmy more aggressive with the offense that they run when Steph's not on the court. So I think that is the part, and they don't like playing different systems in game a lot for different players, but Jimmy Butler is worthy enough of a player to do that for. Good one. Appreciate that. Dig'em, our garbage for your garbage. Who's trading anyone on this team that doesn't include unprotected picks? We aren't getting a game changer with whom we have. Still need to shuffle the deck. Still need to be shrewd. Still need to look for value on the trade market. I don't think it's as bleak as you do, Dig'em, but at this point, I think your point is a valid one in terms of, but you cannot let that lead to inaction. It's, if push comes to shove, and I'll use an example because I don't like this player at all, and Kyle knows where I'm going with this. If push comes to shove and the best you can do for Kuminga on February 5th is Kyle Kuzma straight up, then you trade him for Kyle Kuzma straight up. Woof. Exactly. Like that's not what you want to do, and you're going to spend the next 4 weeks trying to avoid that. But if push comes to shove, you do it. And you hope that you can get a level from Kuzma that he's really, for the most part, been unable to attain since he got paid and won a chip in the bubble with the Lakers. MVP JB, we need to trade Buddy, Kuminga, Moody, Pods, TJD. I think everybody on the roster other than Steph, Jimmy, and Draymond are available in trade. I think the Warriors are open for business on everybody on the roster that's not one of the big three. And I think they would be open for business for a couple of players, as has been reported, even for Jimmy or Draymond. Giannis, obviously, maybe an Anthony Davis. I think that list is shorter, and those kinds of trades are a little bit more unrealistic. But everybody else, yeah. I mean, no question. But again, somebody's got to want Buddy and to pay Buddy for 2 more years, even though he's only in that $10, $11 million range. All right, Kyle, how many more you want to do here? You let me know. I want to make sure we get to a bunch of these.
Let's do a couple more here.
All right, let's do 3 more. We'll do 3 more. Fozzie, we'll do as many as you want, Kyle. We don't need to put a number on, but you jump in and tell me. Dubs have too many guards. Ship out 2 players, bring back 1 player. Yeah, I still maintain, and again, I've said it for a while. I maintain that the Warriors' issue is wings and not guards and not bigs. I think, although they got to figure out if they're going to get anything for Horford, anything from Horford, rather. You're not going to get anything for Horford, but he's still out. By the way, Seth Curry out. Seth Curry getting hurt on his day off. And everybody's been wanting Seth to play. But anyway, yeah, to me, there are too many guards. And you'll pick who are your guards that are reasonably you want to keep. Yeah, it's Steph, it's Melton. It might be Pods. It might not be Pods. And, Pat Spencer's going to be on the team. They got to figure out a roster spot for him. And then, Seth's going to be on the team. I think you'd like to have GP available to be more of a guard than a forward, but he's been more of a forward. Moody's more of a forward. But so, yeah, too many guards for sure, not enough wings. That's a big part of the night in, night out problem for the Dubs. All right, their age and playing style working against them. Couple that with poor player development. It's going to be a few years more of mediocrity or erratic seasons. It's really about this year and next year. And it's about doing everything you can to try and be as good as you can this year and next year. And I get it. You only have one shot to do the big move where you include a bunch of draft picks. But I think the Warriors have to be open-minded to that. It's about this year and next year. And then at that point, you start talking about full rebuild and where are you and do you trade Steph and, if you wanted to move somewhere else. But again, that's a 28-29 conversation, and a lot can happen between now and then as we aren't even quite to 2026 yet. A few more here in the chat. The Dubs are playing 4-on-5 with Draymond on the floor. Sometimes, I mean, not always, but sometimes that's the case. And again, the biggest issue that I go back to is the need to play Draymond at the 4. And so that limits when you play Draymond at the 4, that means you have to put a center out there with him. You got to put a Quentin Post or a Horford if he's healthy, or a TJD, less likely TJD, but you got to put somebody out there with him. And then that takes another
on a Saturday just
winger. That takes another wing or guard spot away. And so you're less effective for that. And I think that only exacerbates the problem, Kyle.
I also think it allows the other team to go double big on you because Draymond's a non-factor from 3. And then, Quinn Post doesn't really have an inside game and can't really beat you off the dribble. So then that other big can guard Quinn Post. And then the issue on the defensive end is that now, and we've seen this with Minnesota and Portland, where you're just getting out rebounded on the offensive glass or defensive glass.
Yeah, and that creates its own new problems. Like you go big because you want to be able to play against other teams' big lineups, and then you really can't compete against other teams' big lineups on that front. All right, let's do a few more. All right, They better do something soon or they'll have no shot at the playoffs. That's a great point. You look at the standings. Warriors are 9th right now in the West, and they are closer to being out 2 games off of where Dallas is the first team out of even the play-in. They are closer to that than they are at this point to 7th. 2.5. They're two in front of being completely out, and they're 2.5 back of being 7th. They are 5 back, and Minnesota beat Oklahoma City last night. They are 5 back of 5th and 6th, which is a ton. And so unless you're going to get really hot, you're going to be a play-in team at best, given the way things look, and look to change the roster. So I agree. They better do something soon. Last one, 2 more. What do we got?
2 more here.
All right. Vic Ferrari. Good teams have a structured rotation, plain and simple. Yeah, that's been discussed a ton. Get a structured rotation. And again, I thought the lineup consistency for 2 games was there, as Steve said it would be. Said it on Dubs OT. I thought his rotation on Thursday with the 3-4 minute subs and 12 guys by the beginning of the second quarter, I thought it was a joke. I thought his rotation was an absolute joke. I thought there were 2-3 guys that played that didn't need to play and played only because he didn't want to have a conversation with 2 or 3 guys and say, you're not going to be in the rotation. Like, it just pare that thing down to 10 and a half. I mean, Jesus, it was basically 9, but then he still played 12 because he wanted to get GP in and he had to reward Kuminga. And then it just, yeah, they need a more structured and shorter rotation immediately beginning tonight. What do we got? JD, look at Caleb Williams, new coach, straight to first place. This is from Jokes on You. Warriors fix is Kerr being too cute. Pat Spencer should have played as the leader of the second unit. Moody, Buddy, depends. Richard as a starter. Yeah, again, that's complete. I mean, apples to oranges in terms of that. I don't think coaching fixes the Warriors' problems. Honestly, I don't think if you sub Kerr out and subbed a new coach in right now, I think this team is worse. And I'll be honest, I think they might quit. I think so. And you can say, well, that's an indictment of the vets, and that's a joke in and of itself. But the new coach is coming in the post-Steph Curry era. At least it should. And I think anything short of that, any kind of coaching change based on the fact that the organization is mad at Kerr or thinks Kerr isn't maximizing the players they have, that, in my opinion, is only going to lead to a worse scenario than where they currently sit. Point blank, bottom line, end of story. Now, that being said, the moment Steph's gone, Steve's gone. And because then you're in the rebuild at that point. All right, one more, Kyle. Let's get our 1 or 2 more. Gene, maybe Dre should come off the bench like David Leaf did for him in 2015. Who's better? Like, come off the bench for who? Like, that's like, come off the bench so Quentin Post can start with who? Like, they don't have another 4 that's like, then you're going to start super small. Like, they don't have another guy like for Kuminga. Hell no. Like, Kuminga hasn't played, like, no chance. Like that's the question. Draymond come off the bench. Well, Draymond could come off the bench if you had Giannis and wanted to start him at the 4. But there's nobody on this roster. They don't even have any 3s and 4s. Who do they have that's a 3-4 beyond Jimmy? And don't say Kuminga because Kuminga's a 4. And Moody is a 3, but he's a 2-3. Like, who do they have on this team? Even Will Richards at 2-3. They don't. What? So Quentin Post can? I mean, it just. I love you, Gene, but like, come off the bench for who? Come off the bench for Moses Moody to play the 4 or GP2. Yeah, everybody's gonna love that. Draymond off the bench so they can play another 4-guard lineup to start with Quentin Post. That's the answer. All right, Kyle, where are we at? You tell me. You tell me when I'm cut off, bartender.
Last one.
All right, last one. Y'all think we're cooked, or do you think we can make the right moves to finally start playing consistent ball again? They're teetering on cooked. But I do think they can make moves and play better. And I think they can play better in the meantime. But it comes with the consistency, and it comes from the OGs doing their thing to be able to carry it. And that starts with Steve and Steph and Jimmy and Draymond. Take some of the pressure off the young guys and lead by example, but lead by your quality of play on the court. That's what this Warriors team needs for the next 6 games, and that's what this Warriors team needs for the next month. That's the reality. And then you get the reinforcements, make a couple of moves, shift a couple of young guys out for some other guys who might be better fits, and then you get a boost from that. You get the OGs take it by the reins right now and say this thing is going to get on track, and then you add to it a month from now when you have the ability to, a month and a half from now, and that's what gives you the boost that you need going into the final 2 months of the season. Great stuff. All right, we'll call it on that note because we're going to reconvene coming up tonight for Dubs OT from Harmonic Brewing in Thrive City. Big thanks to Raf Corral. Raf's got his Bears gear on. Enjoy the game tonight between the Bears and the Packers at Soldier Field, Chicago. We're going to have that one for you here on the leader, and then we'll be on right after that one. It'll coincide with the end of the Dubs game. Dubs OT from Harmonic in Thrive City. Stop by, have a cold one if you're in the area or coming to the game, and we'll talk to you tonight. For Kyle and Raf, I'm JD. Just Dubs right here on these Sports.